Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something significant happening in Nebraska.
Yeah, it's a pretty fundamental shift in their juvenile justice system.
Exactly. We're talking about moving a whole agency juvenile probation from one part of the government to another.
From the judicial branch over to the executive, it's a big move.
And it has potentially huge implications, not just for Nebraska, but maybe for how other places think about these systems, too.
Definitely broader relevance.
So our mission today, we want to get you up to speed fast. What does this change actually mean? Why now? What could the impacts be?
We're working from a really detailed analysis here. It's like a roadmap.
Right. Lays out the history, the arguments on both sides, the practical stuff, so you can walk away understanding this complex issue.
And hopefully be able to explain it yourself.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So the heart of this is Legislative Bill 684, LB 684.
That's the one.
And it says, basically, Nebraska's entire juvenile probation system has to move.
Yep. Out of the judicial branch where it's been for a long time.
And into a brand new juvenile probation agency, led by the governor in the executive branch.
And that switch is scheduled for July 1st, 2026. So not immediate, but coming up.
To really get why this is such a big deal, maybe explain what juvenile probation actually is.
Sure. So at its core, it's about supervising young people who've been through the court system.
But it's more than just watching them, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's about rehabilitation, guiding them, helping them find better paths, not just punishment.
And Nebraska's system has a history, like most states.
It does. It sort of follows that whole American juvenile court movement, starting way back in Chicago, 1899. The focus was always meant to be rehab.
Okay. And Nebraska specifically?
Well, they got formal statewide probation going in 1957, first juvenile court in Douglas County in 59.
Then things got more organized.
Right. In the 70s, they created the Office of Probation Administration, the OPA, to manage things centrally.
But the key moment for the current structure was
1985. That's when they really consolidated everything adult and juvenile probation firmly under the Nebraska Supreme Court.
So the judicial branch took full control then?
Exactly. And the OPA managed it all.
Yeah.
That's the structure LB 684 is now set to completely take apart.
And it's important to note this judicial model wasn't just sitting still.
No, not at all.
It had that dual mission you hear about. Protect the public, but also rehabilitate the offender.
And they really emphasized using evidence-based practices, things shown to actually work.
Plus, the staff had this specific identity, officers of the court.
Yes. And that's more than just a title. It implies a really close working relationship with the judges.
Less bureaucratic, more like an extension of the court itself.
Precisely. Which is seen as vital for quick, effective rehabilitation work.
And complicating things further, the OPA has actually been trying to modernize recently, right?
Yeah, that's a key point. This isn't necessarily a system that was stagnant.
Like in 2014.
Right. In 2014, they took over responsibility for about 1,500 kids who were previously under Health and Human Services. A big shift towards community-based approaches.
And then there was JJSEN.
JJSEN, yeah. The Juvenile Justice System Enhancement Nebraska Initiative started in 2020.
Federally funded.
Yep, federally funded, to really review and reform the system using, the latest science on how adolescent brains develop.
And they even have a current strategic plan.
They do. For 2024 to 2029, it talks about organizational ownership, collaboration, things you'd want to see.
So it really tees up this fundamental question that the source material raises.
It is.
Is this big transfer, LB 684, meant to fix a system that's genuinely broken and failing to reform itself?
Or is it a major structural change that might actually mess up a system that was already, on a path to getting better?
That's the tension, isn't it? It kind of highlights this clash of philosophies.
Judicial independence versus executive accountability, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. How we think justice should work for young people. So let's get into the arguments. Why do proponents say this move needs to happen?
Okay. Well, one of the main arguments you hear is about enhancing accountability, and specifically legislative oversight.
Meaning lawmakers want more control.
Essentially, yes. Proponents, like State Senator Justin Wayne has mentioned, point to times where the legislature felt stonewalled.
How so?
They'd ask the judicial branch for information, for reports on probation, and sometimes the courts would push back, citing separation of powers.
That constitutional principle, right, keeping the branches separate.
Exactly. So the argument is putting the new agency under the governor makes it directly answerable.
Answerable to the governor and also to the legislature through funding.
Through appropriations, yeah, and confirming the director. It breaks that perceived impasse.
Okay, that's the structural argument. But there was also a really personal one in the source material.
Ah, the legal recourse for families.
Yes, this was powerful. The issue is, under the old system, Nebraska law and the Constitution basically shielded the judicial branch.
Judicial immunity. You generally can't sue the courts for damages.
Right. And the source tells the story of Tiffany, a mother whose kid was on probation.
And was almost placed with a felon. I remember that.
She flagged it, apparently wasn't believed at first, but then was proven right.
But even though she was right, and it was a potentially dangerous mistake,
she had zero legal way to hold the system accountable, no lawsuit possible. She called it a profound injustice.
so moving the agency to the executive branch changes that completely.
Wow.
It removes that shield. Families like Tiffany's could theoretically sue the new agency for negligence.
That's a huge shift in power dynamics, creating a whole new kind of accountability.
It is, though there's a potential unintended consequence there, too.
Which is?
Well, if the agency staff know they can be sued, they might become more risk-averse.
Meaning they play it safe.
Yeah. Maybe recommend more restrictive placements, like detention, instead of community-based rehab options that might carry a higher perceived risk of something going wrong and leading to a lawsuit.
Interesting trade-off. What other arguments for the move?
Another big one is simply aligning Nebraska with how most other states do it.
Oh, so Nebraska's judicial model was unusual.
Apparently so.
Oh.
The source says about 2/3 of states actually have probation under the executive branch.
So this isn't some radical experiment. It's more like catching up to the norm.
That's the argument. It's presented as aligning with majority practice.
And does that help with anything else?
Proponents say yes. Better integration with other public safety agencies like law enforcement, corrections, HHS, which are mostly executive branch too. Easier information sharing.
Makes sense structurally.
Yeah, and Douglas County Sheriff Aaron Hansen is quoted supporting it. He basically says, let the judicial branch focus on judging.
I think the judicial branch needs to focus on being the judicial branch. Pretty clear statement.
Very clear.
Okay, so those are some strong points for the change. But obviously not everyone agrees. Let's flip the coin. What are the major criticisms, the reasons people oppose this?
Right. And the opposition is strong, especially from within the judiciary itself.
What's their biggest worry?
Operational efficiency, basically. They're concerned it's going to gum up the works.
How?
Well, Corey Steele, the state court administrator, argues the current system is really streamlined. Judges and their probation officers talk directly, constantly. Decisions happen fast.
Especially in those specialized courts.
Exactly. That's a huge concern. Drug courts, mental health courts, veterans courts, these things are built on teamwork.
The judge, the prosecutor, the defense, the probation officer, treatment providers, all working together.
Precisely. And that close judge-probation officer relationship is key. If you put probation in a separate agency, in a different branch,
You break up that team. Introduce delays.
that's the fear. Bureaucracy, communication barriers. It could slow the system down, potentially undermining courts that seem to be working well.
And related to that slowdown, there's the whole cultural piece, the officers of the court identity.
Yes, that's not just about efficiency. It's about trust and a shared mission.
Staff see themselves as part of the court's function, directly accountable to the judge.
And the fear is, if they become employees of an external executive agency, that bond breaks.
Will judges trust their recommendations as much? Will the collaboration feel the same?
Those are open questions. It could definitely change the dynamic.
Is that concern about slowing things down? Maybe also about loss of control for the judges?
That's likely part of it, yes. The source hints at that. Right now, a judge tells a probation officer what to do, and it happens. It's an internal directive.
But under the new system,
A judge's order becomes more like a request to a separate agency in a co-equal branch of government.
and that agency might have its own policies, its own resource issues.
Its own priorities, potentially leading to disagreements or delays. It's a definite shift in power.
Okay. What other major criticisms?
A really significant one is the risk of politicization.
Meaning, the governor's politics could influence probation decisions.
That's the concern. The head of the new agency will be a gubernatorial appointee, confirmed by the legislature.
So beholden to the governor.
Opponents worry that could lead to pressure, subtle or not so subtle, to follow a particular political agenda.
Like a tough-on-crime stance, maybe.
For example, Could the agency feel pushed to recommend harsher outcomes or be less tolerant of slip-ups by kids on probation, even if evidence-based assessments suggest a different approach?
Overriding the individual case facts for a political message.
That's the potential danger they raise. Compared to the current system where the probation officer's primary accountability is supposed to be to the judge and the facts of that specific case,
So accountability shifts from the judge to a political appointee.
which introduces a variable that wasn't there before.
Wow, okay, clearly very different views on the merits. Let's pivot to the practical side. How does something this massive actually happen? The nuts and bolts.
Yeah, because this isn't just flipping a switch. It's a huge undertaking.
Let's start with the money. It's got to cost something, right?
Well, mostly it's moving existing money. The source says over $71 million in state funds are budgeted to transfer from the Supreme Court to the new agency for the next fiscal year.
So the funding follows the function.
Largely, yes. But, and this is important, the analysis says it's not actually fiscally neutral overall.
Meaning it will cost the state more in the end?
Likely, yes, because the new agency has to build its own administrative support from scratch.
Things like
Finance departments,
Yep.
HR, handling contracts, IT support, all the stuff that was previously shared within the larger judicial branch infrastructure.
So you're essentially duplicating those administrative functions.
Exactly. And that means new costs, new hires, new contracts. The total price tag for juvenile probation will probably go up.
Okay, that's the fiscal reality. What about the people, the staff doing the work?
That's maybe the biggest disruption. We touched on the officers of the court identity shift.
Right, thousands of professionals having to rethink their role.
Going from being aligned with judges and the judicial mission to being employees of an executive agency, possibly with different priorities, definitely different bosses.
That's got to affect morale, right? Maybe retention.
Huge potential impact on morale, retention, and just how they see their day-to-day mission. It's a massive cultural change.
And what about working with other agencies? Does this help or hurt?
It's kind of a mixed bag, theoretically. On one hand, being in the executive branch could make it easier to coordinate with agencies like Health and Human Services.
Because they're all under the same umbrella, reporting up to the governor.
Right. That's a potential plus for collaboration on that side.
But the flip side,
The flip side is you're creating a brand new barrier with the judicial branch.
where the judges are.
Exactly. So the success of those day-to-day operations, especially those problem-solving courts we talked about, now depends entirely on having really good formal agreements between the branches.
Memoranda of understanding, things like that.
Yes, MOUs,
Mhm.
protocols. It adds a layer of formality that wasn't there before.
And data. Moving all that case information must be a nightmare.
Oh, data migration is critical and incredibly risky. The OPA has actually been working hard to improve its data systems recently.
Like with that JJSEN project.
Yes, and tracking fundamental measures. But now you have to surgically remove all that juvenile data from the judiciary systems and build a whole new separate IT infrastructure.
What happens if that goes wrong?
It could be catastrophic for case management. Imagine losing track of kids, appointments, court dates. A poorly managed data migration could cripple the system.
Yikes. Is there any upside on the data front?
Well, the potential upside is you get to build a modern system from scratch.
Design it specifically for the new agency's needs.
Exactly. Maybe design it to track outcomes better, provide the kind of transparency lawmakers were asking for. It's a huge challenge, but also an opportunity if handled right.
It really does sound like walking a tightrope. Okay, so pulling all this together, what does it really mean for how juvenile justice is governed in Nebraska going forward?
Well, it fundamentally changes the governance model. You go from leadership by a judicial branch administrator
To a political appointee chosen by the governor.
you go from accountability primarily to the Supreme Court.
To direct accountability to the governor.
Legislative oversight goes from being limited by separation of powers.
To being direct through funding and confirmation.
Legal liability goes from being shielded by judicial immunity.
To being open to lawsuits like any other executive agency.
And that cultural identity shifts from officers of the court.
To executive branch employees. It touches every single aspect.
It really does.
Given how huge and complex this is, what does the analysis recommend? How can Nebraska actually do this successfully?
Okay, so for the actual transition, the source strongly suggests a joint transition task force.
Bringing both sides together.
Yes, co-chaired by people from the governor's office and the Supreme Court. Their job, map out the whole transfer responsibilities, people, data, buildings, everything. Meticulously plan it.
Makes sense. What else?
The new agency leadership has to create a cultural transition plan.
To deal with that identity shift we talked about.
Exactly. Address staff concerns head-on, reinforce professionalism, clearly communicate the new mission, try to get buy-in. You can't just ignore the human element.
Crucial. And what about maintaining that connection with the courts?
That needs formal agreements. The source recommends drafting detailed memoranda of understanding MOUs between the new agency and the courts.
Spelling out how they'll communicate, share data.
And, very importantly, how they'll keep those problem-solving courts running effectively. Define the protocols clearly.
And maybe something more permanent.
Yeah, they suggest considering a permanent Nebraska Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council.
With members from all three branches.
And other stakeholders, yeah. Put it in statute. Create an ongoing place for collaboration and policy talks.
Okay, that covers operations and collaboration. What about measuring success and oversight?
This is key. Mandate the new agency to develop a public-facing dashboard of key performance indicators, KPIs.
Working with outside experts.
Yes, like the University of Nebraska's Juvenile Justice Institute has mentioned. Get expert help defining the right metrics.
And these KPIs need to be more than just, did the kid reoffend?
Absolutely. They need to track positive outcomes too. Education, employment, stable housing, program completion, family connections.
Things that show actual rehabilitation.
Right. And crucially, track progress on reducing racial and ethnic disparities, which is a persistent problem in juvenile justice everywhere.
Make that data transparent.
Exactly. And finally, mandate independent evaluations of the new agency.
Have outsiders come in and check how things are going.
Yep. It may be the 3-year and 5-year marks after the transition. And make those findings public. Use that IT transition as the chance to build the data system needed for this kind of transparency.
So really build in accountability from the start.
That seems to be the idea.
So when you boil it all down, this whole thing, LB 684, it's way more than just moving boxes and changing nameplates.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fundamental realignment of governmental philosophy in Nebraska when it comes to kids in the justice system. A deliberate choice.
With arguments for it focusing on transparency, accountability, maybe aligning with national trends.
And arguments against it, rooted in fears about disrupting what works, losing that special court culture, and potential politicization.
And the outcome isn't guaranteed either way, is it?
Not at all. The law sets the stage, but success or failure really depends entirely on how it's implemented.
Meticulous planning, managing the culture change, formalizing collaboration, tracking the right data.
All of that. The real proof won't be in the org charts. It'll be in the outcomes for young people, for public safety, and whether the system feels fairer and more effective down the road.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about. You know, what really stands out to you listening to this about how such a massive governmental shift could impact actual young lives and the future of justice in a place like Nebraska?
It's a critical question.
And it's why we think it's so important to keep doing these deep dives into complex issues. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep seeking those insights.